Sitting alone in my small cabin this Christmas Eve watching the snowflakes dance outside my window, I never imagined 3 years ago that this would be my reality. Back then, I was still the golden boy of a wealthy Connecticut family. My father was a successful corporate lawyer, my mother a respected internist, and I was expected to follow in Dad's footsteps. They said I was too dirty for their fancy Christmas Eve parties, but somehow my minor paychecks were never too dirty for their bank accounts. The irony still stings, but not as much as it used to. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories like this one. Now let me take you back 3 years when I still believed family meant everything. Growing up in our two-story mansion in Connecticut, I had everything money could buy. Dad drove a black BMW to his law firm downtown, while Mom took her silver one to the medical practice she had built over 20 years. My older sister Natalie was making a name for herself as an architect in Boston, and my younger brother Lucas was the pride of the family studying for his MBA at Harvard. Every summer, we would vacation in Europe. Every Christmas, we hosted elaborate dinner parties for Dad's clients and Mom's colleagues. I was supposed to be next in line for success, destined for Yale Law School just like Dad. But something inside me rebelled against that path. I hated sitting in lecture halls, memorizing cases, arguing about technicalities. My hands wanted to build, to create, to work with something real and tangible. Everything changed when I met Jake at a local bar during my final semester of pre-law. He was visiting family in Connecticut, but he lived and worked in West Virginia as a coal miner. While other guys my age talked about stock portfolios and internships, Jake spoke about the satisfaction of extracting energy from deep beneath the earth, about the brotherhood among miners, about honest work that powered entire cities. His stories fascinated me in a way that corporate law never could. When I told my family I was dropping out of law school to pursue mining, the reaction was explosive. Dad called me insane. Mom cried for 3 days straight. Natalie said I was throwing away my potential, while Lucas just stared at me like I had grown a second head. But then something interesting happened. When they learned that experienced miners in West Virginia could make $70,000 to $80,000 a year, sometimes more, with overtime, their tune began to shift. Suddenly, my decision was not completely crazy. It was unconventional, sure, but the money was decent. They could work with decent money. What I did not realize then was that this acceptance came with conditions I had never anticipated. 6 months after I started working underground, I came home for my first visit. The physical changes were obvious. My hands were permanently stained with coal dust under the fingernails. My skin was tougher and darker, and despite scrubbing for an hour before the drive home, there was still a faint smell of earth and minerals that clung to me. Mom made me shower twice before dinner, something she had never requested before. While I was upstairs washing off the second time, I heard Natalie talking to her boyfriend on the phone downstairs. "Yeah, he can wash off the coal, but the smell is harder to get rid of," she laughed. It stung, but I told myself it was just an adjustment period. During dinner that night, Lucas peppered me with questions, but not the kind I expected. He did not ask about my health, my safety, or whether I was happy. Instead, every question revolved around money. How much did I make per hour? What about overtime rates? Did I get bonuses, health insurance? It felt strange to have my little brother, who had never worked a day of manual labor in his life, treating me like a financial consultant rather than his older brother. That should have been my first real warning sign, but I was too eager to please, too desperate to prove that my unconventional choice could still make them proud. Over the next 2 years, a disturbing pattern emerged. My family only seemed to contact me when they needed financial help. The first request came 8 months after I started mining. Dad called explaining that they needed to repair the roof after a bad storm. $5,000, he said, and insurance would not cover it all. I sent the money immediately. 3 months later, Lucas needed a new car. His old Honda was embarrassing for someone attending Harvard, he claimed. $15,000 disappeared from my savings account in a single wire transfer. Then came Natalie's cosmetic surgery. $7,000 for procedures that would help her confidence in client meetings, she explained. Each time I visited home, the treatment grew more uncomfortable. I was no longer allowed to eat in the main dining room when they had company. Instead, I was directed to the kitchen table where I ate alongside Maria, their longtime housekeeper, who treated me with more warmth and respect than my own blood relatives did. When neighbors asked about me, my parents would introduce me as our son who does physical work, or Hamish who is finding his own path. Never once did they say I was a miner with pride. Never once did they acknowledge that my work literally powered the homes and businesses of millions of people. The requests for money became more frequent and more substantial. Mom needed money for a medical conference in Switzerland. Dad wanted to upgrade his office furniture to impress potential clients. Lucas required funding for a spring break trip to Dubai with his MBA classmates. Every time I complied. Every time I told myself that this was what family did for each other. Every time I convinced myself that their love was just expressed differently than I expected. But the breaking point was building, and it arrived with a phone call in November that would change everything. Dad's voice was shaking when he called me at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday. His law firm was collapsing. A major client had defaulted on payments, and the firm could not meet its obligations. The family homed their cars, everything was at risk. They needed $30,000 immediately to avoid foreclosure. This was not about luxuries or convenience. This was about survival. I emptied my savings account completely. When that was not enough, I borrowed money from 3 different coworkers, promising to pay them back within 6 months. I took on every overtime shift available, working double shifts underground, until my body ached and my lungs burned. But I got them the money. Dad cried when I transferred it, calling me the savior of the family. For a brief moment, I felt like maybe finally they understood my worth beyond just my paycheck. That feeling lasted exactly 3 weeks. Then came the call about Christmas. Mom's voice was warm and inviting when she asked me to come home for the holidays. "The family needs to be together during this difficult time," she said. "We are having a small gathering on Christmas Eve. Nothing too elaborate, but we want you there." I was touched. Finally, they wanted me home not for my money, but for my presence. Then came the conditions. "Now, Hamish, you know how important appearances are. You will need to shower thoroughly, maybe twice. And please buy some nice clothes. We have some important people coming, potential clients for your father's new practice. You understand." Before I could respond, she continued, "Oh, and please do not mention the mining work to anyone. If they ask what you do, just say you are in geological research or something like that. It sounds more professional." The line went quiet as the words sank in. Natalie called later that evening with a similar message. "Please do not embarrass us," she said. "I have worked hard to build my reputation, and having a brother who works underground just sounds so common." Lucas chimed in during a 3-way call asking if I could lend him money for Christmas gifts. After all, he said I was making good money, and he was still just a student. That night I sat in my small apartment looking at my hands. These hands that extracted coal from deep underground, that operated heavy machinery, that contributed to powering entire cities. My family saw them as dirty, shameful, something to be hidden. But they had no problem accepting the money these same hands earned. The contradiction was becoming impossible to ignore. I spent $500 on a new suit, the most expensive piece of clothing I had ever owned. I bought leather dress shoes, got a professional haircut, and even purchased cologne that cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a month. I took 3 showers before making the drive to Connecticut, scrubbing my hands until they were raw, cutting my nails shorter than I ever had, doing everything possible to erase any trace of my profession. In the car, wrapped in expensive paper, sat a Rolex watch I had bought for Dad with borrowed money. $2,000, but I wanted to show them that their minor son could afford luxury too. When I arrived at the family home, something felt wrong immediately. Instead of greeting me at the front door like they always had, Mom directed me around to the back entrance. "Just go ahead and shower again, sweetheart," she said, without even hugging me hello. "I can still detect a slight smell, and we have guests arriving soon." I stood there in my expensive new clothes, fresh from 3 showers and a 2-hour drive, being told I still was not clean enough for their company. The shower upstairs felt different this time. As I scrubbed my skin for the 4th time that day, I could hear voices downstairs. Laughter, conversation, the clinking of glasses. The party was starting, and I was being quarantined upstairs like I carried some contagious disease. When I finally came down, dressed in my new suit and reeking of expensive cologne, I discovered my place at the dinner table. Not at the main table with the family and guests, but at a small side table in the corner next to Maria, the housekeeper, and her teenage son who helped serve during parties. From my corner table, I watched my family perform. Dad was telling stories about his new legal practice to potential clients, his voice booming with confidence and authority. Mom was discussing medical innovations with a group of doctors, her expertise on full display. Natalie had arrived from Boston and was charming everyone with tales of her latest architectural projects. Lucas, home from Harvard, was discussing economic theory and business strategy with impressed adults who nodded at his every word. When guests asked about me, the responses were carefully crafted evasions. "That is Hamish, our youngest son," Dad would say. "He is finding his own path in life." When someone pressed for more details, Mom would quickly change the subject. "More wine, anyone, Maria? Please refill the glasses." I sat 20 feet away from my own family, invisible and unacknowledged, watching them present themselves as a family of 3 successful children instead of 4. Later that evening, as the party continued, Natalie and Lucas approached my corner table. Natalie spoke first, her voice low so the guests could not hear. "Look, I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand our position. I have worked incredibly hard to build my reputation in architecture. When people ask about my family, I need to be able to talk about successful siblings. Having a brother who works underground, it just reflects poorly on all of us." Lucas nodded in agreement. "Exactly. When I graduate from Harvard, I will be interviewing with top consulting firms. They look at your entire background, including family. We cannot afford to have complications." But Lucas continued with a smile, speaking of money. "I was hoping you could help me out with something. I want to buy a new iPhone and maybe some clothes for my internship interviews. Just a few $1,000s. You are doing well financially, right?" Natalie chimed in with her own request. "Actually, I am renovating my apartment in Boston. I could really use about $10,000. Just a loan, of course. We are family, after all." I stared at them, my sister and brother, asking for money in the same breath as they told me I was too embarrassing to acknowledge publicly. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. They wanted my money, but not my presence. They needed my financial support, but were ashamed of how I earned it. I was good enough to fund their lifestyles, but not good enough to sit at their dinner table. The final blow came when I found my parents in Dad's study later that night. I had decided to confront them directly about the treatment I was receiving. Surely they would understand how hurtful this was. Surely they would see that their son deserved better than being hidden away like a family secret. "I need to talk to you both about how I am being treated tonight," I began. Mom looked up from her wine glass, her expression shifting to one of mild annoyance. "Hamish, you have to understand our position. We have worked very hard to build our social standing in this community. Your father and I have reputations to maintain. We cannot afford to have people thinking." She paused, searching for the right words. "Well, thinking that we raised children who ended up in working-class jobs." Dad nodded slowly. "Son, we appreciate what you do. We really do. The money you make is impressive, and we are grateful for your financial support. But you have to understand that there are certain social expectations that come with our position. When we host dinner parties for potential clients, when we attend country club events, when we interact with our peers, we need to present a certain image." "What are you saying exactly?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mom set down her wine glass and looked directly at me. "We are saying that you are too dirty for events like tonight. Your work, your appearance, your smell, it just does not fit with the image we need to project. But your money, well, money is never dirty. Money is just money, regardless of how it is earned." Dad leaned back in his leather chair, the chair I had helped pay for, and delivered the words that would haunt me forever. "Your mother is right. You are too dirty for our fancy Christmas Eve parties, but your minor paychecks are never too dirty for our bank account. Just keep sending the money home, and maybe visit when we do not have company over. That arrangement works best for everyone." I stood there in my expensive new suit in the house I had helped save from foreclosure, looking at the parents who had raised me, and realized I was seeing them clearly for the first time in my life. They did not love me. They loved my wallet. They did not want their son home for Christmas. They wanted their ATM machine to make a deposit and then disappear until the next withdrawal was needed. I left that night without saying goodbye to anyone. I drove straight back to West Virginia through the dark, empty highways, my expensive suit wrinkled and my heart completely shattered. But somewhere during that long drive home, something shifted inside me. The heartbreak began transforming into something else: determination. I was done being their secret source of funding. I was done being ashamed of honest work that I was genuinely proud of. I was done accepting scraps of conditional love from people who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck. The next morning, I sat down at my kitchen table and wrote the most difficult email of my life. I explained to my family that I would no longer be providing any financial support. No more emergency loans, no more roof repairs, no more car payments, no more cosmetic surgeries or vacation funding. I was cutting off the financial pipeline completely and permanently. I changed my phone number that afternoon and blocked all of their social media accounts. If they wanted to contact me, they would have to put in real effort, and even then, I was not sure I wanted to hear from them. The response was swift and predictable. Within 24 hours, my old phone was flooded with missed calls from numbers I did not recognize. My email inbox filled with messages ranging from angry to desperate to manipulative. Lucas drove down from Boston 3 days after Christmas, showing up at my apartment complex and demanding to see me. I watched him from my window, pacing back and forth in the parking lot for 2 hours, but I never answered the door. He finally left a note on my car windshield that read, "Come on, you cannot be serious about this. The family needs you. I need you. Please call me." But I was serious, more serious than I had ever been about anything in my life. Dad hired a private investigator to track me down when I stopped responding to emails and moved to a different town within West Virginia. Mom sent letters through mutual family friends begging me to reconsider and explaining how much they loved me. Natalie showed up at my workplace one day, waiting by the mine entrance when my shift ended. She cried and pleaded, promising things would be different if I would just help them through this rough patch. I listened to none of it. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting my own well-being and self-respect above their demands. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I had spent years defining my worth through their approval and their financial needs. Now I was learning to define my worth through my own values and my own accomplishments. The mining community embraced me in a way my biological family never had. Tommy, a 50-year-old miner who had been working underground for over 20 years, took me under his wing like the older brother I had always needed. He invited me to family barbecues, taught me advanced mining techniques, and never once made me feel ashamed of the work we did together. "This job feeds families," he would say. "This job powers hospitals and schools and homes. Anyone who looks down on this work does not understand how the world actually runs." Sarah, a nurse at the local clinic, became first a friend and then something more. She was attracted to my work ethic, my honesty, and my dedication to the community. When I told her about my family situation, she was shocked by their treatment of me, but she was proud of my decision to walk away. "You deserve people who love all of you," she said, "not just your bank account." For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and valued for who I was rather than what I could provide financially. 6 months after I cut contact, I heard through a mutual friend that my family's situation had deteriorated rapidly without my financial support. They had to sell the Connecticut house and move into a small apartment. Dad was working for a public defender's office, making a fraction of his previous salary. Lucas had to drop out of Harvard and transfer to a state school. Natalie's architectural firm was struggling, and she had moved back in with my parents to save money. Their carefully constructed upper-class lifestyle had crumbled without my minor wages to prop it up. Part of me felt guilty about their struggles, but a larger part of me recognized that they were finally experiencing the natural consequences of their choices. They had chosen to prioritize image over substance, money over relationships, social status over family bonds. Now they were learning what life looked like when those priorities fell apart. Maybe I thought this experience would teach them the value of honest work and genuine relationships. Maybe they would emerge from this crisis as better people. A year later, I received a letter from Mom. Not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter delivered through the postal service. In it, she apologized for their treatment of me. She acknowledged that they had been wrong to be ashamed of my work and wrong to treat me like a source of funding rather than a son. She explained how much they had all learned about the dignity of work during their financial struggles. Dad was finding satisfaction in helping people who could not afford expensive legal representation. Lucas was working part-time while attending state school and had gained new respect for people who work with their hands. Natalie was volunteering with Habitat for Humanity and had discovered the joy of building homes for families in need. The letter was beautiful and seemed genuine, but it ended with a request. They were slowly rebuilding their lives, Mom wrote, and they hoped I might consider helping them financially just until they got back on their feet. Even their apology came with a price tag attached. I threw the letter away without responding. 3 years have passed since that Christmas Eve confrontation, and I have never been happier or more at peace with my life. I own my own small house. Now, nothing fancy, but it is mine, and I bought it with honest money earned through honest work. Sarah and I are engaged, planning a simple wedding surrounded by the community that has become our chosen family. Tommy is going to walk me down the aisle since my father will not be there. The mine where I work has promoted me to shift supervisor, recognizing my dedication and leadership skills. Every morning when I put on my work clothes and head underground, I feel proud of what I do. I am extracting the energy that powers cities, hospitals, schools, and homes. I am part of a team of skilled professionals who understand that all honest work has dignity regardless of whether you wear a suit or coveralls while doing it. My hands are still stained with coal dust. My fingernails are still permanently dark. And yes, there is still that faint mineral smell that clings to me despite multiple showers. But now I wear these marks like badges of honor rather than sources of shame. The people in my life today love me for exactly who I am. Sarah kisses these coal-stained hands every night when I come home from work. Tommy and his family include me in every holiday celebration, proud to call me their friend and colleague. My neighbors respect the work I do and understand its importance to their daily lives. I am no longer trying to wash away evidence of my profession or hide what I do for a living. I am no longer begging for acceptance from people who were never going to give it. Sometimes late at night, I wonder if my biological family ever thinks about me, if they ever regret the choices they made, if they ever miss having a son and brother rather than just a source of income. But those thoughts come less frequently now, and they hurt less when they do. I have learned that family is not just about blood relations. Family is about people who see your worth, who celebrate your successes, who support you during difficulties, and who love you unconditionally. By that definition, I have more family now than I ever had growing up in that mansion in Connecticut. The lesson I have learned through all of this pain and healing is simple but profound. Never let anyone make you ashamed of honest work that you are proud of. Never accept conditional love that depends on your ability to fund someone else's lifestyle. Never allow people to treat you as too dirty for their company but not too dirty for your money. Sometimes to find your real family, you have to have the courage to walk away from the people who only see your value in dollar signs. I am no longer dirty in anyone's eyes because the people around me now see my heart, not just my coal-stained hands. Have you ever had to choose between your family's approval and your own self-respect? How did you handle people who only seem to value you for what you could provide, rather than who you are? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let me know what you think about standing up for yourself, even when it costs you relationships. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by other people's opinions. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that the work you do with honor and pride is never something to be ashamed of, no matter what anyone else thinks.